This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Patty Daly.
Well, all right. Linda Swain in for Patty Daly on this St. Patrick's Day holiday day, I should say. Provincial and municipal government officials all get the day off today, according to their collective agreements. And by all accounts, it was a rollicking day in the downtown of St. John's yesterday for St. Patrick's Day. I couldn't help but notice that quite a few people, nationally anyway, across the country, were saying that they were expecting St. Patrick's Day to be a bit muted, or in terms of alcohol sales be lower than usual because fewer people are drinking, or drinking has been affected by the cost of living. By all accounts, not so here in the capital city of Newfoundland and Labrador in St. John's. So St. Patrick's Day, of course, a big holiday here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And I noticed that it's Irish Heritage Month, which should come as no surprise to a lot of people in this province. The Irish diaspora, have made a huge contribution to life, especially here in Newfoundland and Labrador, but right across Canada and around the world. And the old saying goes, there's an Irish pub wherever you go. There's some in Moscow and Saudi Arabia, and wherever you want to, mention an Irish pub, if you're allowed to have one, there is one there. So a huge influence throughout the world, the Irish diaspora. And I'd love to hear your Irish stories, or if you have any Irish traditions in your family, or whatever the case may be, especially on this St. Patrick's Day, you are more than welcome to give us a call. Actually, yesterday was St. Patrick's Day, but you know what I mean. Today is the holiday. Well, the Prime Minister and the only Liberal Premier in the country are sparring over the federal carbon tax. The tax is scheduled to increase by 23% in just 2 weeks' time. Speaking with reporters on the weekend, the Prime Minister accused Andrew Furey of continuing to bow to political pressure and calling for a pause on the scheduled increase. The Prime Minister's take is that opponents are focusing too much on the increase in the carbon tax and not on the rebate being provided to offset the added cost to ordinary citizens. In fact, he even went as far as to say, and you may have heard this audio in our morning show this morning, that if the carbon tax were scrapped, ordinary citizens would actually have less money in their pockets because they're being squeezed in every which way. Well, what are your thoughts on that? Do you buy that argument? The VOCM question of the day on Sunday leads me to believe that most people do not. The Prime Minister, the question was, the Prime Minister has suggested that detractors are focused too much on the scheduled increase in the carbon tax and not on the rebate. Does the rebate help you with the added expense from the carbon tax? 79% of those who responded said no. In the meantime, however, we're continuing to see the impacts of climate change around us. Out west especially, broke a number of daily temperature highs over the weekend. Banff hit 15.3 degrees Celsius, beating the previous high temperature record for March 16th of 13.9 degrees Celsius. Beaver Lodge near the border with British Columbia hit 14.4. Edmonton broke a high record temperature with 10.9. And ordinarily we'd say, oh, that's very interesting, but now it feels a little more ominous, does it not? Anyway, if you have any thoughts on that, you're certainly welcome to give us a call. Well, a temporary plan has been announced to help operations continue at Corner Brook Pulp and Paper. And you remember the concern caused by the week-long shutdown in operations back in November, just before Christmas. The company, Kruger said at the time, was due to difficult market conditions. Well, the paper-making business has been declining for decades. This is something we've been watching and knowing for a very long time. Kruger is trying to find ways to diversify its operations, including exploring biofuels. So under the 6-month agreement, Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro will purchase excess power from the Deer Lake Power Plant, and saw logs will be made available to local sawmills. Are you encouraged by these latest efforts? Is it too little too late? I'd particularly like to hear from people in Corner Brook and surrounding area who rely on that mill for their livelihoods. I'd like to hear what you have to say about that. By all means, do give us a call. Well, a date has been set for the by-election in the district of Fogo Island, Cape Friels. That was the vacancy caused by the untimely passing of Derek Bragg. The polls will be open on Monday, April 15th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., with advanced polling taking place a week before that on April the 8th. 3 candidates so far on the ballot. Dana Blackmore is running for the Liberals. Jim McKenna is running for the PCs, and Jim Gill is carrying the NDP banner. So we'll be watching that one very closely. They haven't called the one in Green Bay, White Bay yet. I think that's the name of the district. I'm just going by memory now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there as well. Well, we already have calls lined up. We might as well go straight to the lines. Caller on line 1, you're on the air. Hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? Hello. Yes, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Oh, good morning. John Efford calling. How are you today?
Oh, great, John. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. Had a long couple of weeks now, but we're just sitting and waiting now for a response from the government on our list of I won't say demands, but the corrections that we need made now to the fishery. Right.
So walk us through some of those.
Well, basically, first off, I want to start and say that we received the letter from the government on Thursday, and basically they gave us 24 hours to respond, and it just spoke on outside buyers and crab only. This is not just about outside buyers, and this is not just about crab. This is about all fisheries in Newfoundland. We need every fishery included into what we're looking for. Just to give an example of the outside buyer type thing, last year and this coming year alone, there's, I believe, the only seal plant now in Newfoundland takes around 30 odd thousand seals. And because of that, and when we have a quota of around 500,000, that's all we can take. But there are a couple of local businessmen, Newfoundland businessmen, right now who have markets for around 60,000 seals in Canada, but to be shipped out whole without secondary processing. And it's a developing market, and in conversation with them, this is just what they would have orders for right now in a developing market, which could potentially take care of the full quota that we have here, as they see it. So because, and again, I'll give the example of the seals last year in particular, because there was only processing capacity here in Newfoundland for 30-odd thousand seals, or market inside of Newfoundland for 30-odd thousand seals, that's all was taken. So if we would have those rules lifted, we could have took another 60,000 seals. I mean, that's a lot of money in the fishermen's pockets. So this is one of the problems that we have.
And I think one of the concerns that the provincial government has expressed in this whole concept of free enterprise, in quotations, because I think a lot of people are unclear exactly what that means, but my understanding of it is that fish harvesters want to be able to sell to outside buyers who are willing to come here to buy product. The concern, I suppose, and the concern has always been here in Newfoundland and Labrador, is to maximize the benefits of our own resources to our own people. And we've seen these issues for years and years and years, especially as it relates to employment. Things have changed dramatically, though, over the years, and rural Newfoundland and Labrador is not as populated as it once was. So the concern, I suppose, is that if you're going to be landing product here, then it should be processed here. And the fear is, I suppose, if outside buyers come in and take the product, then we're not going to see the economic benefits that accrue from processing here. That goes everywhere from trucking to processing. So, and all the, other things that come with that. So, how do you square that circle, so to speak?
Oh, I mean, that's very easy, and I'll continue on with basically what we need here, and one of the things we need here is more processing, I mean that's one of the issues that we have. I mean that there are businessmen here now who want to be have processing licenses granted to them. They haven't been granted to them. So I mean, at the end of the day, with what we're looking for, it's more processing on the island as well. But all of this has to come together in conjunction. So with the other. So I mean, at the end of the day, we're looking at increasing employment in Newfoundland, not decreasing. So the outside buyer type of thing is basically going to put us on a level playing field now with the rest of Canada for a bargaining agent. But it's also going to help us get over the hump until the processing that we're looking for is put into place.
Right. And so what kind of a response have you received thus far?
We're still waiting for a response. We're still waiting for a response. I mean, the only thing that the province could come back with was basically that you're going to take away. What about the plant workers, the 6,500 plant workers that are in Newfoundland? That you're going to take all their work away from them? Not so. We got no, and those numbers are a little bit exaggerated as well, from what I can find out. In actual fact, there's a little over 3,000 plant workers in Newfoundland. So that's not the thing. And the government hasn't realized, if they look back over all the plants that the companies here now who got together have closed down over the last number of years, bought out, closed down, forced out of business. There's a lot more plant workers' jobs gone from them than it is from what is going to be lost from what we're talking about doing now, which is going to create more jobs. And
the last 2 weeks in particular, has this been kind of a grassroots kind of movement? Or I noticed that the FFAW is on board, but has this been a union-driven kind of initiative, or was it grassroots and the two sides are similarly aligned, or how is that working?
We are all totally aligned. Every fish harvester in Newfoundland and every fish harbour in Newfoundland, is an FFAW member. This is the fish harvesters. This is the union, our union. It's all one right now. It's the same message from every fish harvester in Newfoundland. There is no other message. This is the message. There is nothing any different. This is it.
And is this driven by the whole concept of, control of the processing sector in the hands of just a few really big players?
Exactly. I mean, they've colluded together. They formed a cartel to take control of the Newfoundland fishery, and the end game will be that we're all out, and there'll be no jobs other than a few factory boats left in Newfoundland. So there'll be no plant workers. Everybody in Newfoundland who's involved in the fishing industry right now, if they don't age out, they'll be vying to get a job on a factory boat. So, and where's the money going then? There's no money going back to rural Newfoundland.
And what about the voice of the plant workers? Do they support this?
I'm pretty sure I'm getting no negative response from the plant workers. I mean, I've been talking to people, and they understand that, look, if this is not done now, they're going to be out of work too. And they also realize that if this gets done, there's going to be more work for plant workers. I mean, there's a major issue here now with the capacity, and my mind is telling me they're using this issue, the capacity thing, to keep us down so we can't persecute our other fisheries. Look, I've been fishing now for over 30 years, and any time that we get bad prices. I mean, you can't control world markets, but when it comes to a point when you say, okay, well, the crab is going to be down this year, I'm going to hit the shrimp hard, or I'm going to hit the turbot hard, I'm going to make up a year. We can't do it anymore because the capacity is not there.
John Efford, I do appreciate your time, and I got to ask, are you anything to John Efford?
I'm Junior.
Thought so. I thought so. Every time I hear your name, I go, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I'm sure everybody else out there is wondering the same. Glad to hear this, John. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
And your thoughts on anything he's raised over the last little while? It has been a topic that has dominated discussion in Newfoundland and Labrador for the last 2 weeks at least. By all means, give us a call. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about the federal government's immigration policy and the impacts from that when we come back right after this.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
And we are back, and we're going to go now to a University of Waterloo labor economist and a leading immigration policy expert, Dr. Mikkel Skutterud. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think that's as good as I can do with it, Linda.
Fair enough. God love you. So we're talking immigration policy, of course, and we've seen these very ambitious immigration targets that were set by the federal government, but it's leading to a lot of concerns now, and Ottawa has had to reevaluate that its approach to immigration in this country. Is it leading to this overheated economy that we're seeing the Bank of Canada trying to address now? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm not so sure that the concern is about overheating and the impact of immigration on inflation. I think that, in some respects, it might actually be the opposite. When you look at labor markets, what we're seeing is pretty sluggish wage growth across the country. And if you look at lower skill labor markets, jobs where workers require the requirements of the jobs are like high school or less, real wages are falling. So the actual wages people receive are not increasing at the same pace that the prices of the things they buy are. And so that, I think that's a worry. And it's, unclear to what extent that's an effect of this exceptionally high immigration we're seeing, but it's hard to believe that that's not playing some role.
So what kind of an impact would immigration have on that then?
Well, so what we've written this paper, as you just described, that the increased immigration was very much a part of the Liberal government's economic agenda, since 2015. And what we have seen are, ratcheting up of immigration rates. So we're at now, population growth rates that we haven't seen in Canada since the 1920s. So what we did is we wrote a paper just to kind of what we felt as economists that have been studying immigration for a long time. I've been studying for 2 decades. Is that a lot of the rhetoric around the Liberal government's policy agenda on this front was pretty hyperbolic, exaggerated. It's not that there isn't a potential for immigration to kind of boost the economy, but a lot of the rhetoric was a bit much. So we wrote a paper, and one of the key messages of that paper, I could go on. I've got to try to summarize this really quickly, Linda. But one of the key ideas in this paper is this idea that what makes a country rich, increasingly, if you look around the world, is the amount of capital per worker. So what's capital? It's like, for economists, it's physical capital. It's all the stuff that allows us to be productive. It's offices and machinery and factory and equipment and technology. It's actually even like transportation systems and the healthcare system. It's even housing. Housing is a really important part of our capital. It's what allows us to sleep at night and wake up in the morning and be well rested and be able to go to work and be productive. So that's all the stuff that allows us to be productive. The bottom line is that what you worry about is that when you increase immigration, there's a risk that the population grows at a faster rate than the capital stock. And so then what you get is a phenomenon called capital dilution, where the amount of capital per worker falls. And that tends to deteriorate living standards. And I think that's what worries us. And when you look at the data, of course, at the national level, what we're seeing is GDP per capita, like the total size of the economy divided by everybody, is falling quite dramatically now.
And we can see it all the time, and we've seen this housing crunch. Is that what's that's exactly driving that?
No, that's exactly it. Housing is just one part of the capital stock. It's a very important part of the capital stock. And it's also a part of the capital stock that's very transparent to people because we all need somewhere to live, right? So if we see the prices, it's very much part of our daily life because we need somewhere to sleep every night. So it's a very transparent part, but it's a much broader phenomenon. But what you're seeing in housing is quite simply, you can't put it any more simply, is that the population, when it grows at 3% and the housing stock grows at less than 3%, there's going to be less housing per person. And that puts pressure on prices because there's less, the supply is not keeping up with the demand, and it drives up prices. And where you're seeing that in particular is in those markets where the newcomers are demanding, right? So like in rental markets, you see it more. So for homeowners like me that I don't have a mortgage, I'm benefiting from this, but for people, especially recent immigrants that sort of have to compete for rental housing in immigrant concentrated communities, is that there are growing pains here.
And you mentioned that the rhetoric, the liberal government rhetoric around this have been hyperbolic. So what was the impetus? What caused them to increase these immigration rates?
So that's a fantastic question. I've been studying immigration. It's been very much a part of my career. So, I kind of watched that very closely, arise around 2014, 2015. It's not very popular to say this, but it's pretty clear to me that the initial impetus from this came from an organization you may have heard of called the Century Initiative. It's funded by two of Canada's richest people, Dominic Barton and Mark Wiseman. They're just like two people that put their money into this organization. The goal of that organization is for Canada to reach a population of 100 million people by the year 2100. And they have been very much a part of the Liberal government's economic agenda. One of the first things that happened in 2016 is Prime Minister Trudeau, tasked Morneau with setting up an economic growth council in 2016. And then Morneau, handpicked Dominic Barton to lead that. And there were 14 people on that group. It was pretty much all management, McKinsey kind of management consultant types and finance people. There was one academic economist on that panel. His name is Professor Chris Reagan, works at McGill University. And I've just recently, publicly on the record, Chris Reagan has recently acknowledged that he was a very strong, critic of this proposal. He did not support it. So the only economist on this panel did not agree with the immigration recommendation. So it's kind of a problem of how public policy comes to be, right? And how sometimes special interests drive these things.
Well, there's the crux of most political debates, of course. So, how does the federal government deal with this now? Now that we've seen this disparity, or the things just coming out of balance, so to speak. So, how do you get back on an equilibrium?
Yeah, great question. That's really the most important thing. And the whole rhetoric around. I hear sometimes the opposite rhetoric that the whole system is broken and the economy is broken, and that's completely hyperbolic as well. It is far from broken. The immigration system we had over the period from 2005 to about 2018, 2019, was, I would say, the most well-functioning immigration system we've had. What you want is an immigration system that's sort of chugging along in the background, very predictably. It's not in the headlines in the newspaper. It's not controversial, right? That's how you get public support. And the way you do that is very much about having a consistent immigration rate. We were at about 0.8% of the population for 2 decades, and that seemed to work quite well. And you also prioritize high-skilled immigration. You don't focus on trying to plug holes in lower-skilled labor markets. You kind of cream skim the talent pool, the pool of talent in the applicant pool, and try to increase what we call the human capital, average human capital of the population. That's how you do that. So that's what the government needs to do. What they have done is they've dismantled the skilled immigration system in Canada. Not many Canadians are aware of that, but that's what's happened over the past 2 to 3 years. That skilled immigration system has been unambiguously dismantled, and there are more policies coming down the pipeline that are moving in that direction to prioritizing, to instead prioritize applicants who are working in jobs with high school or less, because there's this notion that there's a labor crunch in these kinds of jobs, and we don't fill these jobs, the whole economy is going to fall apart, which for any economist is just complete nonsense.
Is there a fear that we're creating this sort of a two-tier kind of approach to employment and immigration, in that, unskilled, as you just pointed out, unskilled labor is being brought in at a lower cost and they're filling those niches?
So a big part of the worry, and you're going to be hearing a lot, I'm pretty sure, having some contact with people in the government on these issues, you're going to be hearing more about this in the coming weeks and months. But, a big part of the growth in population has not been new permanent residents. It's been what we call the non-permanent resident population. So that includes international students, but also temporary foreign workers. I listened to your previous interview about the seafood processing plants. I don't know what it's like in Newfoundland, but certainly in New Brunswick, a lot of these plants, the labor is not permanent residents. These are temporary foreign workers coming in to fill these jobs, these low-skilled jobs. And I think that's the part where you worry, because these very much are. I mean, it's very much a two-tier system. And these people don't have rights to change their jobs when they're not happy. Their contracts are tied to a particular employer, and they don't have access to health care. So, I mean, so the worry is that has impacts on wages in those markets, that it kind of distorts wage outcomes, and it also distorts capital investments, because we know this is perhaps the most important message, is that we know low-skilled labor and capital, technology, automation part of it are substitutes in production. Employers kind of have a choice. When we need to scale up, do we try to do this in a more automated way, or do we do it with more low-skilled labor? And the ways that you raise average living standards and allow workers to have more output per worker is to invest in technology. But when you have really readily, easily accessible low-skilled labor, that incentive to invest in that technology is not there. And so that depresses, wages, earnings, living standards at the bottom end of the economy. And that's a problem that worries us.
Dr. Mikkel Scooterud, it's a huge topic and worthy of an awful lot more time. Unfortunately, we're up to a break, but I really do appreciate your time. A lot of food for thought there. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity, Linda.
Alrighty. Bye-bye. Any thoughts on what he's had to say? By all means, do give us a call. We'll be back right after this on this St. Patrick's Day holiday. Now is your opportunity to give us a call. The lines are open.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Bigland FM radio network.
And we're back on VOCM Open Line. Paddy Daly, I should mention, is off this week. He's enjoying a week's vacation, so lots of rest and recreation for him appropriately on this St. Patrick's Day holiday. We are going to go now to the West Coast to speak with Dave Callahan. Hello, Dave.
Good morning. How are you, Linda?
I'm great. How are you?
Not bad at all. Start of a nice week, but out here, all of a sudden we get trounced with another load of snow. So I guess you'd call this, I suppose this is Patty's brush?
Sheila's brush, actually. Sheila's brush is any storm after St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, so this is it.
Okay, well, Sheila showed up today, and she's not very nice about it. But anyway, that's not the topic for this morning. My topic for this morning is something that imminently should worry a lot of Newfoundlanders about what happens with this service looking forward, and I'm talking about air ambulance. There's been a request for proposal that is basically out for the service to be removed from a centralized location in Gander to be able to be operated from St. John's. And as a matter of fact, the request for proposal, the RFP, is written to allow that to happen, which would then, of course, make it easy for whoever has the right hangar space in a situation, I suppose, to see this effectively located where it would start at the destination. Now, I really don't get anybody's line of thinking on the running of this service in this province. If they feel that ease, convenience, whatever, makes sense to relocate this service to the East Coast, which seems to be quite a common anomaly between any number of things that we've seen in the past. Gets brought into the big show or whatever, but this makes no logistical sense. I would absolutely call upon the ministers involved, because I know it involves more than the Minister of Health. It also involves transportation, as to how these things are operated. And I've heard the argument during my investigations into what's going on with this and why it's even being considered, that, the medical professionals that are using these or providing these services don't want to live in Gander or elsewhere in Newfoundland or whatever. Well, the system was designed to give the quickest and most responsible, I guess you'd say, response to situations such as emergency situations, because there are roughly 5 classifications that are involved with air ambulance. Roughly 60% of them require would have like ACPs or RNs aboard of them. Those would be for critical conditions and emergent conditions. Makes up about 60% of the transfers. The other 40% are combined of the other 3 classifications, one being urgent, referred, and then waitlist. These type of transfers can be done using, because the patients are stabilized at that point via medical facilities. So basically the same type of qualification that would be required like for ground ambulance, ACP, and then flight paramedics or whatever the case may be can do these jobs. They accompany the patient from the sending hospital to the air transport, and then on, of course, if it's tertiary care, it goes on to St. John's, where they also accompany them and transfer to whichever hospital is receiving.
So you're suggesting this be set up at all of the major hospitals?
I'm suggesting that this should stay centralized. Every hospital is not going to have air ambulance for sure, but it should stay where the quickest response time is possible.
And where would that be? Is that part of the problem? Would it be Gander? Would it be St. Anthony? What would it be?
Well, St. Anthony is one of them. I think it's Goose Bay. Would be the other location for air ambulance. Of course, the people of Labrador can certainly use their own located in Labrador. And if you're not going to have a bunch of these in Newfoundland, centralizing the actual service seems to be to make the most sense to me. I guess it's common sense, and it much certainly is. The amount of time that's delayed, and the amount of weather days that St. John's has with no fly. Well, common sense alone says that you go with an airport that gives you the best opportunity to use this service when people need to avail of this type of service. It's a pretty important thing to have.
And Gander was selected years ago for that very reason as a location for an airport.
Yes. And it was, throughout this time, you've seen air ambulance actually up its game in Newfoundland. I've talked to one provider alone that's actually designing the interior of airplanes now, including the very first lavatory that they can have so that you have a washroom aboard air ambulance. It's designed to be able to take family members with the person that's being sent. Lots of room for the technicians to be able to operate in the standing height airplane versus sliding a stretcher in. That's what's going to come to in the back of a plane where you're squatting up one of your medical professionals that have to fly with it. ACPs and RNs need some room to work, and that's the other thing. These planes have been designed to optimize the way that they're used, and that also includes the use of gravel and asphalt runways, because not everywhere is going to have the exact same situation. But over time, they've had the ability to look at this, see what works best for certainly not only our demographic in terms of the people that they haul, but also the condition in which they operate. We have a very challenging, trying condition in terms of winter, especially winter weather, but weather of all types, fog, wind. Reality is elsewhere on the world, but they've learned to deal with it here. And keeping this service in central Newfoundland means the ability to do 2 or 3 extra flights a day because of the accompaniment time and because of the people that would be going along with the passengers and the transfer before the plane can return. All of this is optimized from Gander. They have the proper care for the airframes, the engines. It's all there. And I mean, there's nobody can justify, oh, well, we can't do this properly in Gander, so we will bring this to St. John's. The only justification that's been in this is to make something situationally easy because they don't need to deal with people's attitudes. It's basically, oh, well, I don't want to work there. Well, I like to do this job, but I don't want to have it based out again. Well, they're not going to suit the service to suit your preference. If you're doing this type of work, you should know it's going to be from Gander, and unless somebody can come on, one of the ministers, Premier Fury, whoever, and can tell us why, and I'm not a genius, I don't have all the answers, but maybe they have the answer, why it makes more sense to begin something at the destination versus...
Might it have something to do with the medical flight team? We just had a listener pipe in and say, a serious consideration must be the medical flight team that needs to fly with the ambulance. They may not readily be available in outside areas outside of St. John's, is what I'm saying, and they might not want to relocate.
Well, I'd say do some recruiting. And whoever chimed in and actually made that is one of the people, no doubt, writing this, I would almost bet, or had something to do with the writing of this RFP. If the rest of Newfoundland wants to accept the fact that you're not doing your job right, and you should be out there recruiting people and having them located near the... Gander's got a hospital. There's no reason they can't be located there, but it'd probably be something like, I would akin this to right now. Stephenville Hospital is supposed to have 2 surgeons, but conveniently or not, we don't have an anesthesiologist there. So the 2 surgeons that would have been coming to Stephenville will now be going to Corner Brook, of course, and we'll be the ones left holding the bag on that one. Same thing for air ambulance. If you're listening in from St. John's and you're responsible for recruiting these jobs, you're not very good at it. I would suggest to you probably retirement or get out of it and let somebody else go at it. The fact of the matter is we're not going to change what makes perfect common sense to see this service located where it's optimally positioned to provide response to get people to St. John's a lot quicker than starting this service off in St. John's and having to go to where they're needed.
Dave, I appreciate your call this morning. Thanks very much. We'll see what others have to say.
Thank you very much, Linda, and expect to hear more from me on this. But before that, I would expect to hear from one of the ministers that tells us why. Maybe you can actually get Dave to back off, but come to the public and tell us why it makes more sense to begin this service at destination rather than having it optimally, in a timely fashion, to be basically delivering what we need. Quick response time, which is so necessary when you need it at those hard times.
The very same questions that the mayor of Gander has been posing publicly as well. Dave, thank you very much.
You are more than welcome. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye. When we come back, we hope to speak with you. You're listening to VOCM Open Line.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Bigland FM radio network.
And we are back. We're going now to Michael. You're on the air. Hi, Michael.
Good morning, Linda.
How are you this morning?
Happy St. Patty's Day. Greetings to you. Belated as they are.
Same to you.
I have to fill you in, I guess, on this matter. Talking to Patty there a couple of weeks ago regarding a car I have that I had put into a reputable dealership on Kenmount Road for a callback service, and at the same time asked to have tests done on my antifreeze coolant line, which is leaking quite a lot since I got her in September. I guess I've used 2 gallons of antifreeze. That's
jumpins, yeah.
ridding out in my driveway, whatever. But anyway, calling Consumer Management Services, I got a hold to a lady there, and who's been trying to get a hold to this company for the last 2 weeks. I'm not getting, leaving a message for the manager to call back, and they're not doing it. You know, my beef was I paid an exorbitant amount of labor costs just to have the test done, along with they put in a couple of screws, a couple of plastic ties to tie up a shield on the Volunteer, and I got charged 2 hours labor, 1.9 hours labor, which came to $391. And I can't seem to find out how in the name of God that it took that long to do that. But anyway, they're telling me that I don't have an antifreeze leak, that I have an oil leak. Now, I have that car 7 months now, and there's not been one drop of oil put in her. I didn't have an oil change or anything else. And they misdiagnosed. The problem was what I'm trying to get through. And I guess what the other lady at Consumer Management Services is trying to find out some answers for me.
So they're saying you don't have an antifreeze leak. Is it still leaking antifreeze?
Yes, it's still leaking antifreeze. Just Friday I put in 2 couples or maybe a bit more. And last week I had her at Tire Auto on Topsail Road. And they topped her up for me again. It's a continuing thing that, you know, she's leaking this amount. And I had the company, the head office in Toronto, in Ontario, talking to the guy there who got in contact with the company on Kilmount Road. And the guy in there who worked on the car says, you know, it's difficult to tell the difference between antifreeze and oil. On the ground or in snow or whatever. Now, I'm not stupid by any means. I know the color of antifreeze is yellow-green, and the oil is brown, and I was using the car, it's pretty dark. You know, I don't know where to go from this. All I want is to be trying to get back half the money that they charged me for labor, because there's no way in God's earthly world that it should take 2 hours to do the test on the antifreeze leak. And as a matter of fact, I don't think they found the line that we're talking about. And I've had 2 other garages who found this line going into the turbocharger. I have a picture now. If someday when I get well enough to get into the company and just show them the picture that they weren't able to show me, you know, on the matter.
So, is your vehicle under warranty?
No, the vehicle's not under warranty. But she was on. The only thing was, Linda, the car was on a call back to have transmission link bushing put in. And I asked him to do the test on the antifreeze line while she was there. So, and going to get them to do the job. Okay? Now, when they comes back and says there's no antifreeze leak, it's an oil leak, I know right away there's a mistake because I know there's an antifreeze leak and there's no oil leak, you know?
Have you considered taking it to another garage to finally get it fixed?
The company in Ontario contacted them. The foreman says, well, tell them to call, bring back the car again, we'll do another test. And I'm not going to bring back the car again to do another test to get a false reading, you know, because there's 4 garages now after knowing this is going on, right? And they can't do the work because it's too heavy a job to do, but that's not the point. You know, if the company can do the work, I'd like to get it done. But if they're not, you know, if they don't know what they're looking for, I'm not going to go through that, you know. Patty gave me a number to call somebody in regards to checking into this, and the number wasn't any good. But I did get in contact with Consumer Management Services through calling Consumer Affairs.
And no satisfaction yet.
No satisfaction yet, you know, and I don't know why they won't call the lady back on that matter. You know, she called me Friday and told me she hadn't got an answer up to then. That was a week and a half old that she was waiting for this answer. She said, hopefully I'll get an answer today. If I don't, then I'll go further. But I haven't heard from her since then, talking to her, so I'm assuming she didn't get no call back.
Well, Michael,
with her again this morning.
Do keep us up to date on your situation, will you?
Yes, I will do, Linda.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to me.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We're going to go now to Danny. You're on the air. Hi, Danny.
Yes. I was thinking when they were talking about St. Clair's Hospital, they wasn't going to put it there in the Grace Hospital line. Where is they going to put it?
A good question. They haven't said. All we know is that the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, who is responsible for building things and that sort of stuff, has indicated that the site of the Grace is not big enough for their needs.
Yeah. Anywhere on the parkway to go?
A good question. Again, we don't know. He mentioned, and there's only so much land that's available out there. He mentioned perhaps the West End, which I presume to mean possibly Galway. I don't know. And he mentioned the north side of the metro region, and that's all he said.
You think behind the Waterford Hospital? Have signs.
Yeah, good question. Again, I don't know why you would put another hospital next to a hospital, but the big question for a lot of people was, because a lot of people assumed it was going to be on the site of the Grace, is, some people believe we do need a hospital in the downtown region. So if it's not going to be in the downtown, where is it going to be? And are you going to pass another hospital to get to another hospital? That's the question.
Yeah. Well, the parking lot in there, they can do a double garage on it.
Yeah. I mean, one would think there might be solutions there, or that footprint on that piece of land is fairly big. You've got the old fire station is there, and all of that, where the area where the old school used to be, Curtis Academy, was it? All of that is part of that big chunk of land, but apparently it's not big enough.
Even the nursery residence there too.
Well, indeed, yeah, and that's coming down now. So one would think they're preparing for something. Now, it was an eyesore. It had to be taken down. It should have been taken down a long time ago. But one would think they're prepping it for something. Yeah.
And I got another thing about the offshore oil and gas. You got the turnover out there. It's 20 years old. It's falling apart. Do you think in Bull Arm, when he put another platform built for the turnover?
I didn't catch your question. I'm sorry.
I said the turnover ship.
The Terranova, yeah.
It's 20 years old, and you think they build another platform, wouldn't they? For?
Yeah, good question. They're extending the life of the Terranova, as you know.
Yeah.
But a good question. Of course, the offshore is in its own difficult situation there now. Where the world is moving away slowly in some cases, but moving away from fossil fuels. So there's not a lot of investment in oil development anymore. But it remains to be seen, I suppose.
Is it enough money to discover the natural gas?
Yeah, good question. There's apparently quite a bit of natural gas potential off the coast of Newfoundland and Labrador.
What do you think of the Bay of the North?
I don't know what to think of it. We hope that it's going to go ahead for the economic purposes here in Newfoundland and Labrador, but it remains to be seen, doesn't it? It seems like they're doing a lot of work to figure that out and make it economically viable. It is very far out there, and it's in very, very deep water, so it has to make economic sense, I suppose, to the company.
So a floating platform wouldn't be any good there, would it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I know it's very deep water, so I don't know how that would work. I'm not much of a expert in that realm.
How about out in Adventure? Is that Husky all got that?
I believe it is. I stand to be corrected.
Can he build another platform out there for Beta North?
Yeah, well, that was part of this whole plan, wasn't it? That they were supposed to, but they halted that work, if you recall. Again, it remains to be seen. It's sort of up in the air as we speak.
Yeah, I just calling in because at St. Clair's, like, why not put all the hospitals together? Like, you got the Waterford Hospital there, Cancer Clinic, the Janeway, Grace Hospital, and Health Science Center there too. Why not put it there?
Yeah, you're raising excellent questions, Danny. You're doing a lot of thinking this morning. I like it.
Yeah, thank you.
You have a great morning. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye. Danny raising a lot of really good questions there. If anyone has any answers or wants to chime in, now is your opportunity to do so. Our lines are open. We're up to news time now with Brian Medore.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
And we are back, and we have lines open. Mondays, traditionally a little quieter, people coming out of their weekend rest period, if you will. And today being a holiday. So now is your opportunity to give us a call if you've been trying to get through over the last little while and you've been having some trouble. We are going to go now to Sean Buckingham. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Linda. People are coming out of the weekend after forgetting about all the world's horrors on Friday evening, I guess. So now everything opens up again. So everybody is aware. The reason I'm calling is about that pilot program for the pharmacists that was announced recently. And I just have a question. I'm just wondering how come Dr. Todd Young, who is the physician in Central, how come he is the one that's coordinating that? And why not an independent pharmacy or maybe a PhD at the pharmacy school or someone with a master's in pharmacy who would be more qualified? But I'll just let that hang. The VOCM had on its website a while back that the traveling nurses, there was $35 million or whatever, that was, investigated by the Globe and Mail. And there was somewhat a notorious slant by the Globe and Mail towards that. And then we find out last week that the travel arrangements for the parents of the nurses and all the relatives were paid for to come home Christmas to see the nurses, which I find very unusual.
There were a number of unusual aspects to the contract that were pointed out in that Globe and Mail article, and more of that information is coming to light now, all through access to information, of course. And I don't know if it was all or if it was an instance of one, but it is interesting that it would be part of that contract nonetheless. One would think that that's all spelled out to begin with and is understood.
Yeah, you're right, but maybe the government had a gun to its head from the traveling nurses saying, "Well, listen, now we want this extra." Right at the end, we want our parents to come home and see us. We haven't seen them in 3 years.
I don't know if there was anybody with a gun to their head, but certainly it appears as though, and this is just from the outside looking in, it appears as though there was very little in the way of oversight when it came to that, whether it was the health authority or whether it was the provincial government, or whether the provincial government was trusting in the health authority and the health authority wasn't providing the same oversight, the same kind of rules apply when it's the health authority signing the contract as it would be with the government, let's say, for instance. So these are some of the questions that have been raised about that whole process.
Well, and the thing too, Linda, is that, I mean, it doesn't seem like there was a tendering process for this. It was like, okay, we'll go with this company.
Yeah, it was a sole source contract, yeah.
That's terrible. With respect to the comptroller versus the Auditor General, the Auditor General has total independence. She doesn't need direction from the Premier to investigate. If she smells smoke, she can investigate, right? If she thinks there's a reactor, she can investigate. Or am I wrong in that assessment?
That's my understanding, yeah.
Okay, so it makes you, that's a huge paying job, as you're aware, right? The Auditor General, probably the highest up there in the government. They have all kinds of degrees, and I mean, I'm a doctor. I have no idea how to balance books, but I go to Intuit Turbo. They take care of my taxes. But anyway, not that I'm making a whole lot nowadays, but otherwise, yeah, I just find everything. I don't know. Maybe I've just turned a little bit too cynical, but there's a lot out there to be cynical about. I mean, I'm sure you would agree with that.
And these are why the questions are rightfully being asked, both in the House of Assembly and in the general public. Yeah.
I think the PCs are asking a lot of questions, right? And I think that a lot of the guys that are on the PC opposition, I mean, a lot of these guys are credible. They're good people. Okay, and the NDP leader, Mr. Dean, I mean, he's a great guy, right? I mean, and I know what that tent city business. I mean, he's down there every day, bring coffee down. But I got to give kudos, and I got to send them out today to Minister Fred Hutton, who, after being a bit initially slow about getting on top of the tent city scenario, he came out vigorously and said, I'll go down there 10 times a day if I have to. Okay? And he actually went down a whole bunch of times himself, along with a lot of his associates. So I got to say, I mean, I know Fred personally, so does my family, but his performance there was exemplary. I've got to say. And if anybody's going to solve that, Fred is going to handle it, right? Not a problem. I have full confidence in Fred.
Sean Buckingham, I appreciate your call this morning. Thank you very much.
You take care, Linda.
All right. Bye-bye.
God bless.
We're going to go now to Ted Noseworthy. Hello, Ted.
Good morning, Linda.
How are you this morning?
Like the bird.
Good.
Perked up. Really good. I'm glad you left word there to get back to me, because I'm not going to take up too much of your time, because I'm going to touch on Wabush, and if I get time, I want to touch on that statement there by Poilievre in regards to the bodies, right? Okay, I'll go with Wabush, okay, and I'll just give a little brief background why. 1963 or 64, it was roughly, I went to an interview down at the Newfoundland Hotel, I remember it there. Pickens Mathers there, they were the managing agent for the Wabush mines, and they were hiring, okay? And I remember the engineer that I went for the interview and got the job. I worked in the classifier section in that's the original, what they call the Scully mines, right? That's an open pit mine, and so I knew it. I was there for a while, and I knew that quite well. For a number of years, I never paid much attention to it. Wabush was going pretty good, then they shut it down. But now this is the point I'm getting at now. I understand now that I'm not too sure on the two names. I think I got them right. The two companies involved down there at the present time, I think one is Takora, or something like that,
yeah.
And the other one is Carlisle. Is that the two correct names on those companies?
Takora for sure. I'm not sure about Carlisle.
Something like that, anyway.
Okay.
And I follow that. I follow everything that goes on within this province when it comes to the mining, especially into the gold mining, right, and the Wabush mine situation. But what's going on there now is not good, not only for the either company or for the shareholders, especially for the people down in that district. There's a court battle going on there between the two companies, okay? Now, I don't know, sometimes I don't know if you can comment on court battles or not, but the point I'm trying to make is that these court battles is no good. It's no good for anybody, okay? This is I'm surprised like our Minister of Natural Resources or somebody within the department hasn't, kept us up on top of this.
So what's the nature of the court battle there? What's at odds between the two companies?
The two companies. Okay, I guess one is trying to. One has had complaints about the other one. It's a delay. Whatever goes on between the two companies, maybe I don't want to assume. I don't have enough information on it. All I know is it's a court battle. It's between these two companies, and it's like one company is more or less trying to take over the other company or something like that, okay? I don't really know. But court battles within a place like that is frustrating, like I said, for not only the shareholders. I haven't got any investment in that, okay? But it's no good. It puts the people that are there working, they don't know whether this is going to go, if it's going to go ahead. They don't know if the mine is going to be shut down. And I think we need an update from, who's the MHA down there? Brown, was it? I think NDP, young fellow Brown. I think there should be, we should be updated on what's going on down there. And the minister or his office, I'm asking the question now, are they talking to these two companies? Because, the people down there want to, naturally they want to go to work. And while these court battles drag on, there's no winner in this situation, okay?
Right, and Tacora is seeking creditor protection, or it was late last year. I don't know where that stands right now. No,
I just raised it up because as a former, after working down there, and I've worked other jobs, right? But I had a pretty good job there. I was there, by the way, sad part, but the section that I worked in was called a classifier. I wasn't on duty at the time, but don't want to bring that up, family's listening, but when there was a gentleman killed there from Harvard Race, at that time he got tangled up in the equipment there. I wasn't on duty, but it was in the section I worked in. The other thing I just want to mention on, if we got time, I saw in the shoreline, the art of there were Polyev or Poilievre, man that's running for trying to become prime minister, right? And the statement I saw there, and then he had on there's a part of it there. You can look at this in the shoreline. I think it was Westcott, I think it was the road, whoever writes there. But when he pointed out to the bodies being stacked up, which is a big issue there in St. John's, you know what I'm talking about, where they stacked up in freezers or something in there.
Freezer units outside the health sciences, yeah.
Yeah. I said I didn't think that was in very good taste of him, to me, to point that out, right? Because I don't know Premier Chourie. I know of him, okay, but I don't know as a person. But he's just a new kid on the block, and I can understand if he wasn't made aware of this. And I don't want to go pointing fingers, and I don't want to do that. But look at all the MHAs on both sides of the coin. Okay, we won't go to the West Coast, say within St. John's or in that area, that have been in government quite a number of years. Now, why weren't they on top of this? The other man there mentioned the member for St. John's Centre, Mr. Dinn, Mr. Tom Osborne. Mr. Dinn, Mr. Osborne, and there's some more, and you take the member there, good man there from Mount Pearl, Mr. Lane, and these people are usually on top of this stuff. And I could also point out there the president of NAPE, Jerry Hurl. Okay, these people, they're supposed to know what's going on. Their districts, districts are not that big. These people are experienced political people, and I cannot for life of me understand why somebody, especially within the government, and some of these people that I've made, didn't bring this to the attention of somebody in the province before. But I didn't like the way he tried. That was my impression of trying to make the Premier of this province look bad. Now, I'm not putting in any kudos for Mr. Fury. I know the Fury family well. I know Senator Fury and Chuck Fury. But the Premier himself is only a new kid on the block. And Mr. Polyev, Mr. Fury, at the present time, is in agreement with you trying to get the carbon tax. But I don't appreciate, sir, for you to come here and try to make us look bad across the rest of Canada. That's my opinion. I hope there's something done. I thought about this issue a lot during the storm there when we were shot in, right? And I'll try to put some kind of a plan or something in my own mind, and if I think it's any good, I will either pass it on to my MHA here, great MHA, Al Nottenheimer, or somebody within the Liberal Party. But I will act on it. You can take that to the bank.
Ted Noseworthy, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
I always enjoy talking to you, Linda. Thank you very much, dear. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. And we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we hope to speak with you.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
And we are back. Linda Swain in for Patty Daly, who is off this week. We are going now to Robin. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Hello, Robin.
How are you?
Sorry, you're cutting in and out.
Oh, sorry about that. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just calling in response to the last caller. I only caught a little bit of what he said, and it was the part in regarding to Fred Hutton and Tent City.
Okay.
He mentioned that he believed Fred was down there a whole lot, and he was sending people down. That's just not true. Fred made it down to Tent City once. He was even not fully truthful. He told his story about being down there 3 different times to 3 different media, and it wasn't the same story in each time. So he went down there. He spoke to 2 men through a tent the morning that he was going to be in the house. 2 men who he discovered that were here without an MCP card, which automatically makes them unable to access our health services, our social services. So those 2 men were not. They were told to go and call the shelter line, which they did, and they were informed that because they're here without an MCP card or status in Newfoundland, that they cannot avail of those services. So even though he made it down there once, that did not result in anyone receiving any shelter whatsoever.
So how does a situation like that get resolved then?
Well, that's a good question. And so now we've had to put these gentlemen in touch with, one of the few MHAs who will actually deal with people down at Tent City, and that's Jim Din. So he's working on them. And as well, we have people within the community that are trying to work with income support and to see what we can do there. But it's just one of many examples where there are breakdowns in the system. We have a number of individuals who have been pushed around from these 2 shelters that are being offered for the last 4 years. And so in a few minor instances, they're no longer able to stay at some of these shelters because, as you can imagine, if you've been tossed around from shelter to shelter for 4 years without being able to seek full services for your mental health or, being put on the comfort allowance of, I think it works out to be just over $5 a day, life gets pretty down and dark when you're living a life like that day in and day out for 4 years. So we have a couple of people who are not even able to access those shelters anymore. And the only options that have been available for folks who find themselves in this position are the same 2 options that have been available for over a year now. Nothing has changed. No one has been offered the Comfort Inn. And we are just beyond frustrated with the messaging that seems to be going out from government, which is giving a completely different reality than what we're seeing on the ground. And I just want to say that because that's happening, they're causing, by government being misinforming the public about how they're handling things down at Tent City, they are causing further harm on the people who are living down there because it's making the public believe that they have options to them, that they are choosing to stay down there, that they want something better than what's being offered. And well, yes, they do, but at the same time, they would go into shelters if they felt safe in there. They would go into shelters if there was no drugs in there. They would go into shelters if they could stay with their partner. Some would go into shelters if they could take their animals. There are too many restrictions. These are low barrier, not no barrier shelters. And because of those barriers, we will continue to have people living in tents across this province, not just at Tent City.
So how do you address a situation, let's say, for instance, where somebody doesn't have MCP in order to acquire services? Is it a situation where the MCP has lapsed for some reason, or they've come here from other places, they don't have it?
They're not from here. They're not from here. So,
Okay.
for example, we have a couple of gentlemen down here who were brought here for work and were given accommodations with their work. And their employer failed them and left them without work and without accommodation and without enough money to get home to Ontario.
So
we now have 2 new Canadians down there who were also brought here on the federal job program, who were also wrongfully dismissed by their employer, which we're also working on now. But there are so many cases of people showing up daily that are just not cut and dry. They're not as simple as what the public would like to believe or what our government would like the public to believe.
Right, because every situation is unique to itself, one would think. So how do you address all of these very complex and unique and specific circumstances?
Well, government has to realize that there's more solutions beyond a 5-point plan and beyond building homes. We have been promised sheltered standards for years. I actually have screenshots from Hansard from back when Jerry Rogers was an MHA. And she was asking for sheltered standards for the boarding homes in St. John's, because what happened was when they took, the shelter services out of the adult basic skills and education, because it used to be under that portfolio, brought it into the health and income support area. Actually, it was into income support, which is that part of that, brought that into CSSD. There was supposed to be a change in approach in how they dealt this, because Children, Seniors, and Social Development, it's a social department that's supposed to look at all aspects of what is causing people to end up homeless. And so that's the reason why it was brought over. However, in that in that transition, nothing happened. Nothing changed in regards to how people were taken care of. And so there are no shelter standards. And in fact, we have just been spending money, millions and millions and millions of dollars on taking care paying private companies, private businesses to operate these shelters at a ridiculous nightly rate, and in exchange for zero respect for the people they care for. I'm sure you've seen the reports go around of some of the reports coming out about these shelters and what happens inside of them. If you haven't, I will send you a 10-page document that is just filled with complaints about these shelters going back into well before COVID.
When you say private shelters, what are you referencing?
I'm referencing Mr. Leonard Fair, who owns a number of private shelters. I'm referencing Ashley Ben Saeed. I'm referencing a gentleman named Steve Saunders, who operate these boarding homes, these private shelters, and there's a number more of them around town who are getting, sometimes over $200-300 a night for these people.
Well, if any of them want to
for years.
reach out and call us and tell us what the situation is from their perspective, I'd like to hear that side of the story as well.
They will absolutely be glad to. It's just a matter of finding someone who feels safe to do that. We actually had 5 of them, or more than that, up at the gallery of Confederation Building, so that Mr. Hutton could speak to them directly 2 weeks ago in the House, which he chose not to. So they're there. They're willing to speak, but you have to understand that at the same time, they're very apprehensive of doing so because they're already exposed and vulnerable in the position that they are in. So I will see I will see if I can get a couple of them to call in this week and tell you from their own perspective.
Robin LeGros, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
And thank you for taking my call.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to speak about, going to continue the conversation, I should say, about air ambulance services right after this.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
And we are back, and we received this message from a listener who tells us, they come from a particular perspective here where they kind of understand the business. It says the centralization of the air ambulance to St. John's makes sense both from a recruitment and retention of air medical crews. These crews comprised of advanced critical care paramedics, critical care nurses, and respiratory therapists have a unique and specific scope of practice. Air medical crews require ongoing skill maintenance. This maintenance is mostly available at tertiary centres in Newfoundland and Labrador. The only tertiary centre is at the Health Sciences Centre and the Janeway. If you were to locate air medical crews at facilities that see less acute complex patients, they would lose their skill proficiency in no time. And the listener says, I hope this explanation adds some insight. Well, I'm going to put those questions to Eugene Nippard, who has been a strong proponent of air ambulance services being located in the central Newfoundland region. Hello, Eugene.
Well, good day, Linda, and thank you to Fance and yourself and VOCM for giving me the opportunity. My voice now, Linda, since the spring of 2018, fighting this issue, wherever I go, and I'm telling you the truth, whether it is Tim Hortons in Cornerbrook or the bank in Grand Falls, Windsor, or the Tim Hortons in Paradise, they know me by my voice, and they say, you're fighting the issue of air ambulance. Eugene, it makes so much sense what you're saying, makes so much sense what Dave Callahan just said. So why isn't it happening? And we can't understand, because I sat across the table with the previous minister, Aggie, and said to me, I'm a doctor, I'm a pilot, I am the MHA, I'm the minister. Eugene, this is going to get done. You don't have to preach to me. It all makes sense. And the previous minister of transportation. And now, so, and the premier, he's a doctor, and he knows that you've got to have your air ambulance or any ambulance as close to the patient as possible, because time is a factor. I mean,
that makes sense from that perspective. But what do you make of the argument that this listener made about, access to these advanced critical care paramedics who need to keep their skills up at a tertiary care centre?
So their skills would be lost if they work in Gander? It does not make sense. About 40% of these calls are not emergency, is non-emergency, so you could even do with an EMT. And so you can you can send crews to Nunavut and places like that, and you can't have them operating at a Gander. It doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? And Gander, for example, you can fly at a Gander, because I checked into this last week, 98% of the time you can have a flight at a Gander or into Gander. Can you in the Torbay Airport? Don't tell me, because I know you can't, right? And just last week, there's a couple of days, you had trouble flying out of there. And so say we got 2 air ambulances in the system, is from Gander, Evis. Okay, so they got to go to St. John's, they got to fly to St. John's, take up medical personnel to fly to an emergency in Labrador. How in the hell do that make sense? It doesn't make sense to anyone, Linda. They can, and there's only 25, I shouldn't say only, but there's 25 or 30 employees. We're not talking about stocking the Gander Hospital. I mean, it doesn't make sense. We're held on a stage by either Eastern Health, the bureaucracy in the system, or NAPE. Someone got to be supporting these few employees and saying, no, we're going to have the air ambulance. We have 4 air ambulances. That's what we've been having, based in St. John's, where you got trouble getting out of there, and it's the destination. It's not where we're supposed to be it doesn't make sense. So it doesn't make sense to anyone. And listen, one of these private operators checked to see if they could get medical personnel. They had 35 applicants, right, from a nurse practitioner down that could do the job. It's all whatever. It does not have to be happening. And we, the local people, Central Newfoundland, Labrador, West Coast, whatever, are ill hostage because of the Avalon. We don't need 4 air ambulances based in Avalon. And I just got an update. So they're going to reduce it to 3, and there's going to be a contract out now after with the RFP. But still, nothing based in Central. Linda, honest to God, it's unbelievable. And we have had people waiting in Labrador 22 hours. The plane couldn't get into St. John's to pick up the medical personnel to go to Labrador to pick up the patient.
They
Linda,
changed the scope of the. So, Eugene, if I could back up a bit, because you just caught my ear there, that they've changed the scope of the RFP from 4 to 3.
That's the latest I got, and I get an update. Yes, 4 to 3. But they're going to have an air helicopter, a prop helicopter in the system 24/7. But they were painting a good picture there for a while. The Minister Osborne. They're going to have Art Force One at a Gander. Oh boy, you know. But listen, the new information I got. No, it's not going to be based at the Gander. It's West Coast, Labrador, West Coast, and East Coast. So I mean. I don't know. I've been at this since 2018. I fought a lot of issues in my life, and I've accomplished a lot, I do believe. But I tell you, like the new ferry for Fulham, the list goes on. But listen, this is one that the Avalon got us by the throat, and we can't get the ants off the throat. And it got to stop because it's only 25, 30 employees, like I said, and we can get them in Central as well. If you can send medical personnel from Newfoundland into Iqaluit or Yellowknife and places like that, why can't you send them into Gander? It does not make sense. It's all baloney, and we're ill hostage by, like I said, either Eastern Out, the bureaucracy, or NAPE. Someone is controlling this, and we are ill hostage, and we have actually had patients waiting, dying hours for an air ambulance at St. John's.
Eugene, I thank you for your call this morning. We'll see what others have to say.
Linda, my love, I just opened that the government is listening and challenged the minister or someone to come on and tell us why this is happening, because it doesn't make sense to anyone. I haven't got not even on the Avalon, when I go for Tim Hortons there. Nobody agrees with ambulances based in St. John's and not in Central or where it's closer to the patient. So please listen to the people and save lives. Eugene, thank you. Thank you, my love. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, bye-bye. Your thoughts on what Eugene Nippert's had to say and what he continues to say, by all means, give us a call. Regarding the call we had earlier from Robin Legros regarding Tent City, she made mention of 2 people in particular who had come here for jobs from outside the province, and that didn't pan out as they had hoped, and now they're kind of stuck. A listener sent us this message saying, just heard part of the call regarding the Tent City people from away who can't afford to go to their home provinces. This person says, in many cases, if a person finds themselves in that kind of situation, they can apply for financial assistance for transportation back to their home provinces. They need to reach out to income support to see if they are eligible. That's according to a listener to the program. I have no further information on that, but certainly some inquiries can be made, I would imagine. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, we hope to hear from you.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
And this is Provincials season in the minor hockey world, and we just received this email. After a hard-fought battle, the Eastern Red Wings are the 2024 U13 AAA Provincial Champions after defeating the Eastern Hitmen 5-2. They're off now to the Atlantics in Edmundston, New Brunswick on April 15th. Congratulations to the Eastern Red Wings, U13 AAA Provincial Champions. We are going to go now to Kim Dumphy. Hello, Kim.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call.
Yes, no trouble.
Okay, so I guess I'll get right into it. I'm really nervous. So my husband, Pat, I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of listeners have heard our story or read it on Twitter or X or whatever, Facebook, whatever. So we still haven't got our home renovations. Pat broke his neck in 1995 during the construction, where he was a bricklayer and cement finisher, fully unionized, and dude paid up. And he broke his neck, compression fracture on the job, and he wasn't diagnosed with the compression fracture right away. So he worked with that until he had an epileptic seizure, and then they put him off because of the seizures. Now, his seizures, I mean, he was a young man, a child, that ended up with encephalitis, which caused epilepsy. And he was 8 years old. And during that time, from the age of 8 years old to adulthood, he worked so hard to overcome disability. I'm going to cry, but I can't help it because I got to be sad.
So the epileptic seizure...
So he got his epilepsy basically under control.
So the epileptic seizure...
And he ended up getting a job. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to ask you, the epileptic seizure exacerbated this compression fracture?
No. Okay, no. So when he was 8 years old, he ended up with encephalitis and got epilepsy. So he ended up overcoming the disability and getting everything with his epilepsy basically under control. So he surpassed his expectations, and he worked for a living, landing a job as a bricklayer and cement finisher, where he got the job at Bull Arm during the construction of the gravity base for the Hibernia rig. And during that, he ended up coming up through a hatch on the floor during that, and 16-foot lengths of industrial strength rebar came across a hatch that he was coming up through, and it hit him. The hatch and all came down on top of his skull.
Oh, dear God.
200 or 300 feet up in the air with his safety harness. He was dangling. And he got these zaps. So he went to the medic at Bull Arm in 1995, and they told him, take the day off, you wrenched your neck, we'll see you again whenever. So he took the day off, and he kept working. And when he went, because it was getting worse, and he was still working, so it got worse and worse, and he went to the medic, and then while he was waiting on site in 1995 in the waiting room at Bull Arm, he had an epileptic seizure, so they said, you got epilepsy, it's too dangerous for you to be on the work site, and they sent him home. So back then, there was no transportation or anything like that. And because it was between rotations, he ended up hitchhiking. Now, he knew a truck driver who was just happened to go, so Buddy brought him back to his place on the East End where he lived in Newfoundland Labrador housing at the time. So then, because his epilepsy seizures started where they were under control, and then they got worse, his neurologist, who was one of the top ones in the province, who he has to this day, decided to do some tests. And months later, they found out that months earlier he had a compression fracture in his neck. And they put him off then, and he had to get workers' comp. He went on social services while he was waiting for workers' comp, and then he finally got workers' comp. So then he degenerated. His epilepsy got worse and worse. He had several falls. Then we got caught up with workers' comp hamster wheel, right? So anyway, make a long story short, so in 2013, we signed off on renovations because after multi-years and several occupational therapists that specializes in wheelchair accessibility for homes and seating assessment specialists, they determined after a multi-level, in-depth analysis that we needed a police built in our home because the way our home is designed, they couldn't risk structural failure with our home and make us homeless as a result, right? And so we said, okay, so they told us that they were going to do. So we signed off on it, but they told us basically it was going to be a one-time reno, and they weren't going to touch our driveway, and they told us that after we signed it. But they told us that they'd consider it. Verbal, of course, over the phone. So anyway, we got caught up. We said, well, we need to be able, you guys got to access, because I'm also physically disabled, although to look at me, most people don't know it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. And we're both injured workers, considered permanently disabled from the workforce. So anyway, so now we ended up didn't getting that renovation done just because they wouldn't change the one-time only clause. Because the reason we wanted that took out, because they knew that Pat's falls, seizures, and deteriorating spinal cord itself, because it was getting chafed, was degenerative. So they knew he was going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So we want to stay independent because we are homeowners. We worked hard for our home. So now they got... They're after denying just about any medical device that Pat always got before since he got this new case manager. And then we got caught up with being sent to internal reviews because, when they're policing themselves, they're going to go along with what they recommended. So forcing the injured worker like us to external review. Now, Pat is about to age out of the workers' compensation system in the next few years. He has been fighting this since he's a young man in his 30s. And I'm 10 years younger than him, and it's a good thing I am. But I'm also disabled. But we are fully able to be independent in our home if it's made safely accessible to us.
So what's at the crux? What's at the crux of the argument here? Because you're providing us an awful lot of information here. But what's?
Yes. So they decided in the last few months to get an OT person to go that met Pat one time only for less than a half an hour to determine that all these other professionals that in the past all agreed that this is what the man needs, a piece built onto his home because structurally the house wouldn't be safe to do it in the footprint of the home. So now they gave this OT signed off on it. This person that Pat met one time that has not been involved, this OT, I question their professional ethics.
Okay,
and
so
I
you want
to make sure that's checked.
You want an extension?
But they want the house built. Sorry?
You want an extension to the house?
No, yes. So they determined that the house would have to have an extension for it to be safely accessible
right,
for Pat.
But you don't want it
so
to...
So this new OT don't agree. This new OT don't agree. He thinks it could be done in the footprint of the house. But that will mean us reducing our 3-bedroom family home, which we have worked our entire lives basically between us to maintain, into a 1-bedroom house. That will cause also financial loss for us when we're already on a fixed income. And in order to do that, they failed to meet both of our needs because both of us use mobility devices when we need them. And in order to put it in the footprint of the house, they got this OT to shave down as many numbers as they could. Then they gave that to a Newfoundland Labrador housing inspector who came here with those numbers and then said, yes, it can be done in the footprint of the house without any consideration of what Pat needed. Medically, what all the other professionals already said is what he needs. So we went online on Twitter and all the different places and we tagged a bunch of people. When Pat needed his wheelchair-accessible van, when we had a particular lawyer who's now associated with the Liberal Party and was at the time, he was marvellous, he helped us. He asked us then, because he was doing it pro bono, bless his heart, and he said, you need to choose between the van or your house, because we could win both, no sweat at all. So because he needed to get to appointments because of his disability, we said the van. So we have been without any help, any support, any advocacy. The workers' advisor that we were referred to, I'm not going to comment on that, but let's just say nothing that's time is of the essence. So now we got to go through another external review process, which is going to force us back to external review, internal review, all this stuff. It's just a series of things like a hamster wheel a worker got to go through. Pat's time is running out. So in order for him to stay safe and not have a fatal fall in his house, we don't know what to do. We need somebody to help us advocate. I've got his case file here, And workers' compensation, Workplace Newfoundland, sent it to us. I had to get somebody to carry it to me, to my van, because it's 50 pounds. And that's just Pat's. And I've said to them repeatedly, and all his case manager says is, I have to check with this one, or get back to me, or whatever. So there's no communication now. There's a complete breakdown of trust. I don't feel that the Workers' Advisor's Office is actually meeting Pat's needs. We need a lawyer to help us, but on a fixed income, that's not social services. And since every lawyer in Newfoundland that we called, most of them works for Workplace Newfoundland. So what do? Die in our house? Do I have to put my husband into long-term care? Or do we have to take some other more drastic medical thing that everybody is dreading? We don't know what to do, and we need help.
You say more drastic medical situation that everybody's dreading?
Yeah, like medical assistance or something like that, because we don't know what to do anymore. Yeah. We want to live, we want to thrive, we want to stay independent in our home. The quality of life here, if it was accessible the way it was supposed to be made accessible. But now they got Pat over a barrel, me over a barrel, knowing that like it or lump it, right? So after,
Kim,
whatever happens with...
Yeah, I'm overdue for the news, I'm afraid. So we have to leave it there. But you've raised this now publicly. Let's see if you get any kind of responses.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Your thoughts on that, give us a call. We're overdue for the news with Brian Medor. This is VOCM Open Line. Now's your chance to give us a call.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
And we're back on VOCM Open Line. Linda Swain in for Patty Daly, who is off this week. And this is the last hour of the show. Now is your opportunity to give us a call. We're going to go now to Port aux Basques and speak with Greg Sheaves. Hello, Greg.
Good morning, Linda. Greg Sheaves in Port aux Basques.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I just want to call in this morning there regarding those windmill projects and things again. I think a lot of people don't really see how crooked and misleading our governments are being on these projects. Like right now this morning, they announced a memorandum of understanding, an offer to sell hydrogen and ammonia to Germany. But how do you go ahead and do these projects and offers when they're telling you on the other side that they're still doing environmental assessments? And then the federal government last week announced, I think it was 120 or 125 or $30 million to give to the project to get it up and running faster. So, that's sort of putting the cart before the horse.
So is your concern with the process or with the project as a whole?
Just how crooked they go about doing things. And, a lot of these people are selling our province out, really. And when you look at how all these politicians work, even when Goody Hutchings sold her hunting lodge in Labrador, she's our federal member. Then John Risley is involved in the windmill project. Then he buys it from Goody Hutchings. Then he takes Andrew Fury up for some meetings at his hunting lodge in Labrador, even though John Risley is involved in the windmill project. So, are they all opportunists looking for future positions and kickbacks or what? They're not dealing for the people. And they'll go ahead and they'll do whatever they want, the same as they did in Muskrat Falls. They turned around and there was contractors putting in roads and clearing land a year or two prior to even coming out with a questionnaire that is sent out to the people asking their opinions, questions, and comments. They get something in their head and they're going to do it anyway, and you got this site there where people can go and put on comments and concerns about these windmill projects, because a lot of Newfoundlanders think that a lot of this power is going to be generated for us, but it's not. And, so if you go on to protectnl.com, the deadline is March the 20th, and make any comments, or if you have questions, you can find it there. And let's let a government know how the people really feel, because they just don't listen. And, there's so much stuff that goes on and it's not even fair.
Have we seen a royalty regime from this yet? I mean, that was another important part of this conversation when all of this, first was brought to the fore. Have we seen a royalty regime yet?
I'm not sure, but Linda, as far as I'm concerned, any big business venture, if it's feasible, it will work on its own. And why does the government always have to take our tax dollars and donate to these multi-billion-dollar projects? It don't make one bit of sense. But, you know, I got to say sometimes, like, as bold and as blunt as it is a lot of this stuff being done like money laundering? Are they providing money to...
Oh, you're getting into a whole other aspect of things here now, Greg.
I know, but the thing is...
You got to be careful.
I know, but why are they all so set in their ways to do something that the people are not in favor of? There's got to be a reason at the end. Like, people don't just do that.
Well, I suppose government's involvement here is that, you know, these companies need access to Crown land in order to put up these windmills. They have a big geographic footprint, as you know.
But, Linda, they don't even look after their own citizens. I had a quarry permit that expired last year from, like it's through Crown lands too. That expired back last year, September, October. I'm still waiting 4 or 5 months later for a road zoning permit to be approved so I can get my permit back that I owned for 40 years. They don't even look after their own people. They go out looking for free trade. We don't even have free trade in our own country. I deal in scrap metal. I can't even take a dump truck or a tractor trailer load of scrap and go to Halifax and sell it. I have to pay a fuel surcharge for every kilometer I drive in Nova Scotia, and I have to buy a permit every trip I make. That's not free trade. I'm a Canadian. I bought my fuel in Newfoundland. I paid all the taxes. I got my road permits in Newfoundland. I got my license plates. And our tax dollars funds the Trans-Canada Highway. But no, they don't look after their own, but they'll kiss ass with foreign countries and lead them around with a gold chain.
Greg, you're not pulling any punches. I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but like I say, people to go on, and if they got comments and questions about these windmill projects, and if they're not in favor, go to protectnl.com, and the deadline is the 20th, and the more comments and signatures they can get, the better it will be.
Appreciate your time, Greg. Thank you.
Okay, Linda, thanks for your time, too.
Okay.
Okay,
bye-bye. And we're going to take a very short break. When we come back, we hope to speak with you.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
And we're back. Linda Swain in for Patty Daly. And we're running a story in VOCM News today that people in central Newfoundland are upset with the provincial government for shutting down a bridge at Badger Lake, which provided easy access to cottage country. Well, Greg Davis joins us now on the line. Hello, Greg.
Yes, hi. Good morning.
So what's the concern here?
Well, my concern was it started March the 1st when my wife took sick. Violently sick, actually. She was of no help to herself or anything like that, to the point where I had to call the ambulance, which I did. The ambulance only got so far as the bridge, obviously, because it's barred off there. But my priority then was to get the paramedics in here to see what her problem was, which is what we did. Myself and the two paramedics grabbed the bed that they have there and all their gear, and we walked in. It wasn't very far because I'm only just on the other side of the bridge. So when we got in, well, the wife was on the floor at that particular time, and they started to do their work that they do. They do it well. But the problem existed then that one paramedic, he said, boy, we're going to have problems getting her out of here. Well, I said, boy, I'll get my truck, because my truck is parked on the opposite side of the bridge because you're not supposed to be going back and forth there. I said, I'll take the chance and then I'll do it. So that's what I did. I went and got my pickup, came back. We got my wife aboard my truck. She was of no help to herself, and I couldn't handle her by myself. So all of us got together, and we got her out across the bridge and aboard the ambulance. But they're going to have to do something there now, because that was a life or death situation. Another hour, and it would have been really serious. But something has to be done there. When I heard it on the news there that it's because the bridge there now was because of they're not logging and all that kind of stuff in there anymore. But that bridge was put there for cabin people so that they could build their new cabins to lots that they bought off the government. And now here we are with this kind of a scenario. My wife's still in the hospital. So, it's not right what they're doing here now. This is a serious concern. It's a life and death situation.
So why was the bridge closed?
Because it's not safe to be crossing.
Gotcha. And are there any plans to replace it or put some kind of an alternative access in place?
None. There's nothing. And I mean, the cabin owners and stuff, the bridge committee and everything, they're after doing everything that they possibly can. But, somebody got to die because before something, there's a bad situation now. That's what's there now, a bad situation.
So you're a liver in the area?
I live here, yeah. I've been here for 15 years.
And there's a few more permanent residents in that area as well.
That's correct. Yeah. Now they're further inside. I don't know what would have happened if somebody way inside gets sick because they got to probably drive 4 or 5 kilometers to get out to where the ambulance can get to. So it's not right. I mean, like I say, the wife is still in the hospital. I mean, it was a serious concern.
So this committee, the Rocky Brook Bridge Committee, that's not easy to say, Rocky Brook Bridge Committee made a presentation to government, I understand, to cover the cost of replacement of a bridge. Where did that go?
Well, I haven't heard anything back on that. It's just I don't know where it's going. It's not going anywhere right now, I don't think. Yeah.
So what happens now? I mean, how do you get your wife back home? What are your options?
Well, the only way that I can get her back home when she gets out of the hospital is to take my truck, which is parked on the other side of the bridge, and drive her over here because there are vehicles that are going back and forth the bridge. There's posted bridge closed and all this kind of stuff, and they got concrete pylons, but they're getting around it and getting across. I leave my truck on the opposite side, and that's it. You got no other. Like I had no other choice. I had to drive across that bridge. I had no other choice. That the wife had to get to that ambulance, and I didn't care what it was going to take to get her out there.
Right. You had no choice in the matter, and if something had happened, God forbid.
Yes. Yeah.
So the people.
I was willing to take that. I was willing to take that chance.
Yeah.
But it's terrible. Well, that's the next thing that would have happened. She would have died. Simple as that. And I don't know where it can go from here. But when they said that there's no logging operations or any of that going on in there anymore, and there isn't. But that bridge basically was put there. There was never no logging. When that bridge was put there in 2006, I think it was. There never was any logging going on in there. That bridge was put there for access to all these lots that the government sold.
In 2006, and the bridge is already to the point where it's dangerous to use.
It's a wooden structure.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's a wooden structure with steel beams. But if once your wooden structure is down underneath, your beams are not going to be much good to you.
No, they're not going to be much good, are they? Yeah. So, Greg, what's the solution?
Well, they're going to have to put in a bridge there because the one that's there is beyond repair, in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure it's on anybody else's opinion because there's nothing left to it really. But like I say, they're still you're taking chances going back and forth there, to their cabins and stuff. Now, not everybody is doing that either. I mean, most people are out parked outside in the parking lot, as we call it, on the other side of the bridge next to the Trans-Canada Highway.
Well, Greg, I'm glad you told us your story. I'm so sorry that this had happened to you in this kind of way to really illustrate, the dire circumstance that some of the people in that area are facing. We wish you and your wife all the best. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, thank you very much. And like I say, she's not out of the woods yet. But anyway, I appreciate you listening to me.
All right.
That's good.
Greg, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Greg Davis there with the trouble with the Rocky Brook Bridge, which was closed with no alternative in place, so they're being told. We'd like to hear from others on that one as well. We're going to go now to Alistair Han. Hello, Alistair.
Good morning, Linda.
How are you this morning?
Oh, not too bad. I'm calling from Burgeo, and we got a dirty old morning, so I've been listening to your program. And I've been listening to regarding the air ambulance, Linda.
Yeah.
Bill Callahan and Eugene Nippard. And what they're saying is making a lot of sense. Now, what I'm not stupid enough to think that we're going to have a runway and a air ambulance coming into Burgeo. But it's quite possible, Linda, that somebody from Burgeo could very well be the patient that needs the air ambulance from Corner Brook or Stephenville. And to have the air ambulance parked in St. John's is ludicrous. It's ridiculous. My God, what bird brain ever came up with that, Linda?
Well, I would imagine there's a reason for it. But as you and others have pointed out, a more centralized location out off of the Avalon Peninsula seems to be the preferred route.
Well, Linda, you've been trying to defend that decision this morning, and you've been saying
Oh, I'm not defending it. I'm just presenting some other sides. I don't know what the solution is, and I don't know what goes into these planning things. I'm just presenting, trying to draw out the conversation, if you will.
Well, you sounds to me that you're smart enough to recognize stupidity when you hear it, and that is stupidity. Now, you came on with one there that someone texted you or something about the skills you can get to go to St. John's, and they would lose their skills and all that bull. Now, Linda, we're not talking about heart surgeons or brain surgeons. We're talking about a paramedic that's going to go on those air ambulance. And if they're going to lose their skills just because they're in Gander for a few weeks, well, I would suggest they don't go on holidays down in Florida or anything, or else they're still going to lose their skills. This is ludicrous, Linda, and I just listen to it. And when I hear something, and everybody is questioning, why don't someone come on and explain it? Why don't someone come on and defend it? Linda, the MHAs, the ministers, anybody in the healthcare service, they can't defend it because you can't defend stupid. And it's just as plain as that, Linda. And I really would like to hear more people in more places in Newfoundland stand up, because you're not going to get anybody to come on air and defend this decision. And like Bill Callahan said, if they don't want to move to Gander, it's just like any other job, Linda. Then start recruiting and replace them.
Alistair, I really appreciate your no-nonsense, pull-no-punches approach to topics. Thanks so much, Alistair.
Well, Linda, common sense is not very common anymore. And it's about time that someone who hears this stuff will come on your lines and put it out there and let somebody know that we're not all stupid in this province. And thank you, Linda, for putting up with me.
Alistair, thank you.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye. Your thoughts on what he's had to say, by all means, do give us a call. Do we have time to take this caller? I think we might, and if we don't, we'll continue the conversation after the news. Hello, Marilyn.
Hi, Linda. How are you this morning?
Good. We only have about 2 minutes before news, so if you don't get your points made, are you willing to wait through the news as well?
Absolutely. I'd love to.
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, I'd like to talk about the wind farm proposal for the Port Peninsula.
Right.
Okay, so they're proposing 155 industrial, these are offshore-sized turbines for our little area. They're going to be a kilometer away from our homes. They've never been put on land before. This is a virgin industry for a virgin company, and it's a virgin industry for the province, for this company. There's no wind legislation. There is no data on these turbines from anywhere else in the world, and they want us to be the guinea pigs on the Port Peninsula. So I'm just here this morning to say that, the opposition is still strong here. We will not lie down and let them come in and ruin our homes, our water, destroy our wildlife, our birds, our limestone barrens, ruin our fishery, all in the sake of Germany, sending hydrogen ammonia over to Germany for what? They're going to be tapping into our grid. So what is that going to mean for all of Newfoundland and Labrador? How is that going to affect our hydro? Wilkinson was on this morning talking about signing another MOU with Germany. This is the 11th hour to signing a second MOU with Germany. Why? Why now? Why again? They've already signed one with Germany. So to me, the federal government is putting their nose in where it shouldn't be put. They're putting it into the business, putting pressure on the provincial government to sign this deal. Everybody says, okay, well, this is a done deal. The federal government is coming in. No, this is not a done deal.
Marilyn, on that note, I have to go to news. Are you willing to hold?
I'm holding.
Okay, you hold. We'll
you.
come straight back to you right after the news with VOCM's Brian Medore.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
And we're back, and we're going back to our conversation with Marilyn. She was just getting started there, Marilyn. You mentioned in terms of this proposed windmill development on the Port Peninsula, you said that the people of the Port Peninsula are being made into guinea pigs. What did you mean by that?
Well, this is a new industry by a virgin company, and there's no wind legislation in Newfoundland. So we're the first of its kind in the world for this kind of proposal. These are 654-foot industrial-sized turbines that have not been put on mountaintops before. And we're going to be, it's going to be a kilometer away from our homes. So the health effects of these turbines is proven that, there are health effects, shadow flicker, there's infrasound, there's a lot of health effects from it. The bigger the turbine, the larger the health effects. But
infrasound, would that be the vibration? Yep. What are you talking about there?
The vibration, yes. But also, everything runs downhill. We're all downhill from the mountains, so everything, the construction of the roads, the dynamite. So the explosives is 12 million pounds of explosives for this project. Roughly 6 million for the Port Peninsula, 6 million for Caudray Valley. Now, the EIS, when the EIS was submitted to the government said it was deficient, and we agree with that. The EIS amendment is also deficient, and the government has no other choice but to say it's deficient, because if you have any kind of brain at all and you're reading that material, you're going to come to the same conclusion that everybody else reading it would come to, because it's missing so much information as far as what happens if our water is destroyed. What happens to the moose? The studies have not
I was going to ask, what does happen to wildlife? Do we have any case studies here or around the world where these kinds of wind farms are put in, wilderness areas, for want of a better term?
Well, here's the problem. There is the moose studies haven't been completed. The birds, the bats studies have not been completed. They don't know where they're putting the cement plants. All they say is potential. They don't know how they're going to run the cable for the transmission lines through the isthmus, which is the little strip that connects the Port-au-Port Peninsula to the remainder of the mainland. So they got three options. They don't know what company they're going to be buying the turbines from. Like, this document is so incomplete that it needs to be really destroyed, because the lack of information in there is ridiculous. So the provincial government really has no choice but to turn this EIS down, because it's lacking in information. But I'll say this: if they're going to approve it, they're going to approve it, but they're going to meet opposition. And the thing is, and investors beware, because if you're coming into the Port-au-Port Peninsula and you got people, majority of the people here are against this project. We've said no from day one, but yet you keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And the mental stress that you've been putting on the people here to fight this is unbelievable. But if you're going to keep pushing, every step of the way that you come in here, we're going to be pushing you back. So investors beware. This is not going to go down easy. Whatever it takes to stop this from destroying our homes, what do we have to lose? What do we have to lose, Linda? Okay, our insurance is going to go up on our homes. 6 million pounds of explosives. Our basements are already cracked from Atlantic minerals blasting here. I got 3 in my basement alone. Okay? Our water is going to be gone. Our roads are already destroyed. And if they're going to come in doing construction 24/7 for 2 years, there's going to be nothing left of our roads. And the government and the company said they won't be paving our roads. Now, will the government come in and pave our roads later? I don't know. I have no idea. But the thing is, we won't be able to live here, because the noise and everything else, the health effects, our water will be destroyed, the animals will be gone, there'll be no more birds, there'll be nothing left of our woodland, all the trees will be cut down, our mountains will be destroyed, our limestone barrens will be destroyed, our plants, our species of plants that are known to nowhere else in the world are going to be gone, all in a swipe of a pen. Because why? Because Germany needs ammonia. Well, I'm sorry, but you know what? If Tom Rose and Stephenville wants this project and people in that area, we'll find a place in there to put the wind turbines. Don't put it on our backs. And that's all I got to say, Linda. It's not coming here.
Marilyn, I appreciate your call this morning. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye. We're going to go now to the independent MHA for Mount Pearl Southlands, Mr. Paul Lane. Hello.
Hello, Linda. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing quite well, thank you. Linda, if I have time, I got a couple of things I just want to bring up. Of course, the House Assembly is closed needlessly, I would add, given the fact that there's lots of stuff that we could be talking about.
What do you suppose is behind that? Was it the demonstrations by the fish harvesters, or is it something else?
I honestly can't say for certain. I mean, nobody told me. It was never discussed with anyone. It just came upon us all of a sudden with no explanation. My guess would be they couldn't handle the heat. They've had a rough couple of weeks in the House Assembly, whether it be the issue on the travel nurses or the fishery. And, of course, with the fishermen out there on the daily, I'm sure that may have contributed to that decision, but I'll leave that to the government to answer for. Like I say, they never consulted with me, and I'm actually in my office here now, so I'd be glad to be in the House Assembly representing the people who elected me. But with that said, there's a couple of pieces of legislation. There's all kinds of stuff that we need to debate and deal with, but I'm going to just name a couple. So the first one I just want to bring up is the Independent Appointments Commission. Now, that was Bill 1 of the Ball administration, and at the time, you can remember the former premier talking about we're going to take the appointments, we're going to take the politics out of appointments, out of political appointments. And they formed this Independent Appointments Commission. Well, guess what? I got news for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. That piece of legislation, as written, is not what the paper is written on. That's why I voted against it in the House Assembly, and it still needs to be changed. So there was a statutory review that was done last year. There was a report that came out in May of 2023 by a gentleman by the name of David Conway. He was the consultant that did the review. I did have a discussion with him, as did a lot of other people. about the concerns that we had. And the main concern that I had, and he has addressed it in his report, I'm very thankful for him for doing that, because it is the right thing to do in my view, is the fact that when somebody applies for a position in the provincial government, and in order to eliminate these political appointments, supposedly, you go through this independent appointments commission, where they do interviews and so on. It's supposed to be done in an unbiased way. And by the way, I'm sure it is, and the people who do serve and have served on that commission, they're all good people. That's not the criticism whatsoever. The problem is that once they do this evaluation, they would submit 3 names to the minister for, potential candidates to appoint to various positions on boards, agencies, commissions, and so on of government. The problem is that there is a clause in this legislation that basically allows the minister to take those 3 names and stick them right in the shredder and appoint whoever he or she feels like. That is the problem that currently exists. So
has that occurred?
Well, I can't tell you, because the other problem is that if that occurs, there is no requirement for the minister to let the public know that he or she did that. So I have no idea if it was done or how many times it was done. But under legislation, that can be done. So what I had recommended to the commissioner, and he basically took my recommendation and put it right in his report, and I'm thankful, like I said, that he did, is that what I had said is there has to be one thing or the other. Either A, the minister must be compelled to select one of those 3 names, and if there is some reason why he cannot or will not select one of those 3 names, or if there is some reason that they didn't go through the appointments commission as they're supposed to, and someone's appointed to a position, then the minister should be required to publicly to let the public know that this appointment did not go through the process and was simply appointed by the minister, and to provide a reason to the public as to why that happened. And that is the recommendation that Mr. Conway has in his report for changes to that legislation. So that was received in May of 2023, and to date I have seen no legislation to change that and other recommendations that he made. So that's definitely one piece of legislation that should be brought before the House to make the required changes so that we have true openness and transparency. The other one that I want to very quickly bring up is... And
yes, it'll have to be quick because we're up to a break.
I will.
Yeah.
Fixed date elections. We currently have legislation that, and you're hearing people all the time, I'm hearing people speculating, when is the election going to happen? Will it happen this spring? Will it happen this fall? When will it happen? Well, we have fixed date elections legislation that was brought in by the Williams administration. Problem is that, too, is not what the paper is written on, because there is a clause. There is a date, and I believe the next election, if you go by the legislation, should be November 2025. But there is a clause in there where it says that basically, despite that date, that the Premier at any time has the ability to go to the Lieutenant Governor and call an election. So basically, the legislation is useless. We have a date, but the Premier can decide not to go by that date and just call it whenever it's convenient for him. So once again, this is something that needs to change. Now, there's no report on this one, but I would say to the Premier, if you want to do things right and above board and stay within the spirit of the legislation, A, you stick to the date that's in the legislation, and B, we make a change to the legislation that would once again say if there was some extraordinary circumstance whereby you cannot stick to this fixed election date, maybe there's a clash with the federal election, or maybe, there's some other, legitimate reason, then the government then should be forced to open the House of Assembly for an emergency debate, to put it on the floor of the House to debate why you're going to call the election when you're calling it. Other than that, we stick with the fixed date. Then we have certainty, people understand, and then government cannot manipulate elections to jive with when they're riding high in the polls, or to jive around some big announcement they're going to make and then call an election for their own political gain. That's something else that needs to change. That's 2 very solid pieces of legislation that should be debated in the House of Assembly, but instead we're going to sit home. The House is hardly open as it is, and now we're going to shut her down for a couple of additional days when there's all kinds of important things that we should be bringing forth that would benefit democracy and benefit the people of this province.
Do you think a provincial election is in the offing? I know there's been plenty of speculation about it.
Well, again, I have no idea, but I would just say that given the fact that we are now seeing a by-election just called for Cape Friels, Fogo Island Cape Friels, and also given the fact that if the province were going to call an election this spring, for example, they still have a number of districts. Even if they were to say, well, our sitting members, we're not going to even open up to contest your seats for nominations. If they were to do that, they still have 20-odd seats or 20 seats for sure, just about between the PC districts, my district, NDP district, that they would have to call nominations for people interested in running in those districts. And that process takes time. They can't do them all at the one time and so on. So we've heard not a sound on that. So I don't believe there's going to be any election until, my guess would be this fall. But then again, they could go, I think it's November. I stand to be corrected, but I believe it's November 2025. They can go that long. But again, what we need is we have legislation, have the fixed date, stick to it, and then we know, everybody knows it's a fair playing field, it's consistent, and everybody knows when the election is going to happen. There's no more guessing. There's no more governments manipulating it for their own political purposes. And like I say, if there is some extraordinary circumstance whereby we can't have the election on the fixed date that's in the legislation, then make it a requirement to have an emergency debate in the House where the government would have to justify to the House Assembly, to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, why we are not sticking to this date.
Paul Lane, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and have a great day, Linda. Always great talking to you.
You too.
Okay,
bye-bye.
Bye
now. And we'll be back right after this.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
And we're back. We're going now to Clarence. You're on the air. Hello, Clarence.
Yeah, calling on the windmills.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that lady is against them. I put the name, I said there's quite a few behind her. I don't think there is. But maybe she needs to take a trip over to Ramia, to right in the town. A little smaller, but serving the same purpose. And as far as pollution from them, if there is any, it's very, very little.
How many are in Ramia?
Ramia, there's 6 of them.
And how tall are they? They're very big. They're
not near as big. I'd say they're probably 50 feet, 40 feet, 45, something like that.
Yeah. Big difference, though, from, 100 and, 60 or 70 of these absolutely massive structures.
Yeah. Well, it's a little different, too, because Ramia is only a small place with 6 of them right in the town,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see what pollution can come from them anyway. It's only a big tower with a big blade on it and turning. More birds get killed running the windows and on the highway. So,
I guess the concern is that, some of these proposed projects are so massive in scale with so many of these turbines, which are huge, and they have to be connected by road and all of those things. And people, I guess what the last caller was outlining was, people have concerns, they have questions, and they feel like, at least, from the calls that we've been receiving, it feels like they're not getting the answers to their questions.
Yeah, the only one I heard, I listen to Open Line quite a lot, but every morning. It's this lady on to the mainland. It's the only one I heard calling on. There's a lot more, is there?
Well, we've had 3 or 4 today alone.
Yeah. But anyway, there's a few out there, and I guess she got a few of them wound up, too. But I can't see any pollution to it. Like I say, they got them in Ramia right in the town. Not as big now, but they're serving the same purpose,
Yeah. Well, Clarence, I appreciate your call this morning. Thank you very much.
It was very good, yeah.
All righty. Bye-bye. And Clarence there with saying, the ones in Ramie are not causing them much of a problem. Now, Fonz, you and I had a little chat earlier today.
We did.
Fonz King with us, ladies and gentlemen, entrepreneur and broadcaster.
Yes.
So, Fonz, you had a little concern about Scams.
Well, I get these emails all the time as a small business owner, especially who works in the wedding industry as a photographer, videographer, DJ. I got my crew and my company. We do weddings all over the island. But the email this morning was quite interesting because a lady by the name of Jessica wants to shoot her wedding in Winnipeg, and has no problem with the fact that my travel expenses to shoot the wedding in Winnipeg is twice of what the wedding package would actually be. And so small businesses, if it looks like it's going to be too good to be true, it probably is. Now
So let me guess. She's going to what?
She wants to send me the check. Right? And I'm going to cash the check.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pay for the makeup artist, and I'm going to pay for the decorator, and I'm also going to pay the caterer, as well as the venue. And she has all the contact numbers for me to transfer the money, but she needs the deal and check with me. So she's going to give me the full amount for everybody, wants me to put it in my bank account, and then transfer this to these people. And she's willing to send me this check today. Right? So.
And let's guess, it's going to bounce.
Oh, 100% it's going
to
bounce. I'd say I get about 7 or 8 of these every year. This is the first one for 2024. I'd say in the next couple of weeks I'll get a bunch more.
Extraordinary.
And I always go back and forth with them for a bit, just for pure curiosity to see the information that I can get from them. And I always ask them to give me a call. Right? Give me a call. I'd love to chat about your big day and the services that we can provide. And it's really funny because they always have just recently had throat surgery, or they currently have laryngitis. They're unable to speak on the phone, or anybody within their wedding party is able to communicate other than email or text. WhatsApp is brutal as well. I get messages, people phishing all the time.
Wow, just extraordinary. You got to stay on your toes, don't you?
You do. And I've had some that have been very, like, I've almost, like, you can feel that something is wrong with some of these emails. I had one last year. They were getting married in St. John's. The reception was in Logie Bay. They went on. They had details. They had addresses. But once it got to the part, we're going to send you the check. You're going to pay for the makeup artist. You're going to pay you're going to pay this person. You're going to pay. I'm like, oh yeah, red flags are shot up all over the place.
Yeah, because you do that all the time. You pay for the makeup artist.
Right?
Yes,
yeah,
right.
Yeah. Give me a call. We'll chat about it. And sure enough, I've just recently had throat surgery.
It's just amazing. Anyway, folks, just another example that anyone can fall a victim to or fall prey to these Scams, yeah.
Plenty of them.
But you won't be a victim, will you?
No, I'm not going to be.
You're going to try your level best.
I listen to Open Line enough, and I know the scams that are going around.
There you go. Fonz King, thank you for that. And thank you for everyone for your contributions this morning. Great conversation. Let's continue it tomorrow, shall we, on VOCM Open Line. The snow has started in the metro region. Be careful out there if you're out and about, because I think it's going to get ugly. But let's let Brian Medore tell us that, shall we? On News at Noon, coming right up.